So in the last Snare Saturday video, I showed you a Ludwig 5x14 Copperphonic LC660 snare drum. And a few of you started leaving comments on how you were looking for a new snare drum, but were considering brass until you heard that Copperphonic. So it got me thinking, why not compare the Copperphonic to the chrome over brass from the earlier Snare Saturday videos so you could hear the difference between them. What's going on, everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the Ludwig Copperphonic LC660 snare drum to a Ludwig 5x14 chrome over brass LB400 BT snare drum. This is going to give you the opportunity to hear both drums back to back so you can hear the difference between them. Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Now, both of these drums have been featured in earlier Snare Saturday videos. The chrome over brass, which was the predecessor to the Superphonic, a chrome over aluminum drum, was introduced by Ludwig in the 60s, and it was known as the Super Ludwig. They became really popular in the 90s because of their sound and are heavily sought after, especially if you are looking for a vintage Superphonic. They have a distinct sound because they are a brass shell, which has a lot of warm overtones to it, but since it is chrome plated, it has a little bit of bite to it and has a higher characteristic than a standard brass drum. Now, the Copperphonic was the drum that I showcased in the last Snare Saturday video, and copper is known for having a darker, warmer, maybe even a little bit drier tone. So if you are looking for something that is a little bit more direct, copper's a great alternative for you. So this is going to be an interesting comparison because both drums are 1.2 millimeter seamless shells. One just so happens to be copper, and the other one is brass with chrome plating. Both of them have 2.3 millimeter triple flange hoops. They also both have Ludwig's P88 AC throw-off and P35P butt plate. Rounding out the similarities, both drums have the stock heads from the Ludwig factory, which are Ludwig branded Remo heads. Safe to say it's a coated ambassador on the top and an ambassador snare side on the bottom. And like every other snare drum from Ludwig, they come equipped with their generic snare wires. Now for the differences. The first obvious is that the brass drum is chrome plated and the Copperphonic is not. But besides that, the copper snare drum also has 10 double-sided imperial lugs. And since this is a modern day Ludwig snare, it has rubber gaskets behind each lug. And like a lot of people identify, these gaskets tend to dry up the drum a little bit. This is why a lot of people recommend removing them. That way the drum sounds closer to what they did back in the day before they put the rubber gaskets on them. But for the sake of this video, I do not want to modify the drum. That way you hear exactly what it's supposed to sound like coming from the factory. Now, this chrome over brass snare drum in particular has 10 double-sided tube lugs, and although the imperial lug and the tube lug both have 2 holes for the mounting screws, you can see that the tube lug doesn't have as much surface area rubbing up or pressing against the shell of the drum, which is going to change the tone of the drum a little bit. Plus, it doesn't have rubber gaskets. So the reason why I wanted to compare this Copperphonic to the chrome over brass drum is because a chrome over brass drum is going to have a different characteristic than a standard brass drum. It's going to be a little bit brighter. Plus, when a lot of people are looking to purchase a metal drum, they're either going for a Superphonic, which is chrome over aluminum, a brass snare drum, which could just be a brass phonic, and of course the Black Beauty, which is a brass shell that's nickel plated. So this video allows you to hear 2 drums that are just different alternatives. Now, just like every other Snare Saturday video, I'm going to play both drums through a few different tunings. I'm going to start out in a low tuning and work my way up to a higher tuning. And in each tuning, I am going to play both drums back to back. That way you can hear exactly the differences between them. So, enough of me talking. Let's dive into playing. Now, the first thing that I've noticed straight out the gate that has nothing to do with the sound of the drums has everything to do with holding the tuning of the drums. In the lower tunings, the chrome over brass was dropping in pitch drastically, especially during that third tuning. As a matter of fact, I had to do a couple takes, and you could still hear towards the end of the chrome over brass example, the tuning was starting to drop a little bit. Maybe this is because they are tube lugs rather than the imperial lugs, or because a brass shell resonates a little bit more than copper. Maybe even a combination of the two. Not quite sure. What this has pointed out to me, however, is that I should invest in some lug locks. So if you have a brand that you prefer, please leave that in the comment section so I can check them out. Now, in regards to tuning, the one thing that I heard is the chrome over brass drum has a longer overtone and sustain than the Copperphonic did. And as I was tuning these drums, I started out finger tight and then did a half turn on each lug on the top head, and that got both drums pretty close to one another. But in those lower tunings, the Copperphonic, the fundamental note does stick out a whole lot more. Now, in the higher tunings, both drums were holding the tuning a whole lot better than in the lower tunings, and it felt like the brass had more body to it. However, the copper had a deeper tone in my opinion. Either way, I would love to get your opinion and what you thought of each drum, so make sure that you leave that in the comment section below, letting me know. Also, if you have any other additional questions on either of the drums or any metal snare drum, maybe even the gear that I am playing in this video, feel free to leave that in the comment section as well, and I will try my best to answer them. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see some earlier videos from the Snare Saturday series, I've put a link to the playlist in the description below. I'll also have it pop up right here to make it a bit easier for you. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. That way it makes it a little bit easier for others to find it. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on comparing the Ludwig 5x14 Copperphonic LC660 snare drum to the Ludwig chrome over brass LB400 BT snare drum. And until next time, see you later.